Okay, so this is the first active routine. So we were starting off on the brick, legs folded, with the top of the feet just kind of going into the floor, soles facing up. We're just going to sit for about 30 seconds or so, and then we're going to switch the feet over and repeat it. If you want to put any weights on the knees, you can. If you want to flap them, that's also fine. I tend to sit fairly close to the front of the brick for this to allow my knees to sink down towards the floor. However, if your knees do go all the way down to the floor, then probably just move back just a touch. It's better to have space to move into, so otherwise we're limiting the stretch. As you're doing this, try and focus on the form of the upper spine. Try and keep the chest pushed through. Try and tuck your hips a little bit as well so that your lower back doesn't overcompensate for that. Here you can see on that right leg, oh sorry, this is mirrored, it's actually my left leg. There's that tight adductor on that side. Okay, so we've been in that for about a minute. Going to get rid of the block now, and we're going to go into the hip rotations. We're doing about 20 hip rotations, and the aim is to sort of gradually speed up as we go. We said groups of 5 is maybe a good way to work, but better to treat them really individually and speed up as necessary. Try and keep your chest as far forwards as possible. It's kind of helpful actually doing this with the wall behind me. It kept my back straight. I wasn't leaning against it, but if I did brush it, I need to sort of keep my weight forwards. And again, you can see how I like to have my heels on one side of the mat and my thumbs and my bum on the other. The focus here really is on the inside leg, trying to get that knee down to the floor and also keep the hip as low as possible. If your bum starts to walk away from you, just reset. Again, we don't want to walk too far away from the hands. And keep chest pushed up towards the ceiling. If we let the lower back sink through, we are losing the benefit here. Okay, once we hit that 20, we're now doing 10 where we pull what I call the inside leg as far as we can first. Keep the opposite knee on the floor, and then once you hit your peak position, we're going to roll them both over, keeping that nice wide gap. See that I had to concentrate through these ones a little bit, clearly a little bit tight this afternoon. Pull the knee up and swing over. I think I'm actually counting, that's right. I'm trying to make a little bit better job of counting. I get so used to just kind of freestyling it when I'm doing my own, and then I plan a routine to last half an hour and it ends up taking me an hour. Trying to avoid that for these ones. I had also done quite a tough hamstring routine the following night before this. A lot of this was a bit testy for me. Alright, and have a little rest. Now once we're out of that, we're going to sink into the wall assisted butterfly position. So Oh no, I did, beg your pardon, got it the wrong way around. That must be after these. Sorry, hip capsule stretch first. I'm doing this on, what is it now, Tuesday night, so in a few days since doing this. Okay, I quite liked this camera angle. It's maybe worth having a camera at an angle like this. A good way to keep the back form nice and straight, just showing you there where my bum is off the ground. I'm going to try and just rock it into the floor to maximise that stretch and keep pushing the chest forwards. And it's very rarely that I do a routine that doesn't include this stretch. It's just the best. I was holding these for about 90 seconds on each side. Again, if it's getting towards the end of the 90 seconds, try and focus on upper back form again, pushing the chest through, straightening the spine. Just maximise that hip capsule stretch. Okay, out we come, giving it a little shake. We're going to switch over. Same thing the opposite way. Again, you can vary the foot position, whether your toes are touching the floor or not, or the angle of the foot, wherever gives you the best stretch. I couldn't seem to get this working to begin with today, which I suppose is a good thing. If it means that I'm struggling to find tension there, it means that it's releasing quite nicely. I think I probably overdid these 90 seconds a little bit here. Perhaps my inner second counter is not quite as accurate as I like to think it is. Either way, there's no harm going for a little bit longer. So many of the muscles that we're going to stretch in this routine pass underneath the glutes. We may as well have them as loose as possible. So, alright, I think now we're going into this wall assisted butterfly. So sit your bum all the way back to the wall. Almost forgetting what I was doing there. Feet in nice and tight. And brick down, supporting the thoracic spine. Okay, now again we're going to hold this for 1 minute where we're just resting. Leave the hands on top of the knees. This is the slightly lighter position. You can flip your elbows out into the wings, maybe for the second 30 seconds if you want to add a little bit extra weight. for the second minute we will do 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off of abductions, where we're using the glutes to basically pull the knees down to the floor. Okay, for these abductions I like to put my hands in front, pulling down for 10 and relaxing. And again, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. 10 seconds on the break. Again, as you're pulling the knees down, try and keep the chest up, don't bend down to compensate. Here we go again. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. And away we come. Again, you might want to pause here and double up on that, totally up to you. If you feel like your hips are far enough, then you can leave it there. Okay, we're grabbing both bricks in now. We're going to come into this straddle forward fold. Now when we did this on camera, I think I did it just full side on. Here I've got a bit of an angle so you can kind of see how my feet spread as we go. So toes are pointing forwards in line with the inside of my heel. I'm starting with my hips pretty much over the top of my ankles. The aim is for them to be behind the ankles for the majority of this. There we go, just rocking back a little bit there. That's forwards, that's backwards where we want to be. And then just going to start off with these kind of cat-cow positions. This is a bit like that kind of stripper spinal mobility workout or exercise that we did in one of the other routines, where if you focus on trying to move the hips, it's going to be very difficult. If you focus on trying to move the spine, the hips will just kind of move as a reaction to that. Okay, so focus on the cat-cow in the lower back. Just arch the lower back, squeeze it through. If you don't get much movement, it doesn't matter. It will come eventually. Okay, as I'm beginning to warm up, I let the feet just slip a little bit further. Again, this is probably likely to be one of the more difficult positions for you. The adductors are not a good stretch for me compared to my hamstrings and calves and the rest of my lower body. My adductors are a bit short. Okay, so I was aiming for about 20 of these cat-cow pulls. I'm trying to sort of just show you there that my knee is locked out, and I think actually I called you up on that the other day. It's the same thing. I think it must be the camera angle just makes the knee look like it's not locked out. Okay, just showing you that, again, beneficial maybe to do this nearby a wall, give you the confidence to just lean back, and if you do accidentally lean back a bit far, then you know you ain't going to fall more than a couple of inches. Okay, resting elbows down onto the bricks. Now we're going to kind of pyramid this brick situation, if you remember. So we're going to start on the high bricks here, and we're going to try and bring them down sort of halfway, right down to low bricks if we can make them. It begins to get a little bit low for me when we get down there, and this is all happening over about a 2-minute period. The timings within this really are up to you. It depends on how you're feeling that day. When we did this in the evening, I was feeling alright, fairly loose when I did this one. This was quite early in the morning, so I was still a bit tight from sleeping, so I sort of struggled here a little bit. If you start to feel pain in the side of your ankles, by the way, when you're doing this one, you can see there's quite a tight angle there. Just point your toes out a little bit. When we're starting to work down into this straddle position, when we get towards end range, it's fine to point the toes out a bit. Again, for me, I want to hit a middle split eventually with feet flat down on the floor, which means I need to also be stretching my ankles in this position, but that's not really an aim that we're working for, so don't worry so much about that ankle position. Okay, starting to come down. Remember, when you're doing these, try and get as much of it as you can from the hips. Again, mine is not a fantastic example because my hips are still a little bit stiff. They've got a lot of work to do. So a lot of that bend comes from the upper back, but it will get there eventually. A few weeks ago, I was struggling to get to 90 degrees here and rest my elbows on the high bricks. It does come quite quickly when you start doing it. Okay, and we're just sort of coming towards the end of the 2 minutes now, maybe 30 seconds longer, so back into the higher position. I'm also spending a little bit of time here when my feet are wide, just trying to stand up again for the middle split. I need to be working on increasing the arch in my lower back to allow my femur to basically slip where I need it to and not bash into my pelvis. But you can just hold that nice straddle position and then slowly walk feet in. Probably good to take a few seconds to remobilize after that, especially after the butterfly and that in quick succession. The hips are likely to be quite stiff now. I'm going roughly 20 to the left, 20 to the right. You can see they're already looking better from when I first stood up. Alright, now we're coming into this lying position. These are the sciatic nerve stretches that we're going into. Again, these are quite nice to do before hamstrings. You get a little bit less nerve pain when you're in your extreme, or your end range. The hamstrings is something we're going to work on quite a lot. I think when I gave you the first routine and we did it online, because your downward dog was looking so good, particularly in the lower half, I sort of didn't necessarily think it was going to be so important to stretch hamstrings and thought we could just kind of focus on the back on the upper half. But I think actually, because your ankles are so mobile, they were almost disguising a little bit of a lack of hamstring flexibility, which we saw when we came to the long lunges at the end of this. Now, there is two parts to getting into that long lunge. One is the strength to lift the leg through sort of that strange range of motion, which, to be honest, is almost less about strength as it is just learning the move and how to balance your body as you're doing it. So you'll pick it up with a technique fairly quickly. But these hamstrings, I think we do need to do a bit of extra work on. If you think about a slightly rounded back in a downward dog position, having just a little bit of extra length in your hamstrings is going to allow you to push your chest through to the floor. So, this is the active stretching routine we're going with for now. I am going to put in some more quite intense hamstring things maybe next week. We'll see. I don't want to kind of change things about too much so that it gets difficult. We are now in kind of like the perfect routine of passive, resting and active, and working that for 6 days a week with accessories like wrists happening on a 2-day or a every other day basis is pretty much ideal. So I think possibly we'll just make 1 or 2 changes to this active routine at the end of the week, but try and keep the bulk of it fairly similar. Definitely these sciatic nerve stretches will keep, because these are great for both the hamstring flexibility and the quad mobility and the quad strength. We'll maybe, I think what we'll do is basically progress the single-legged hamstring stretch to the next level, which is basically involves just squeezing a brick between your tummy and your thigh. But again, that's something for next week. So there was 2 sets of these. Sorry, went off on a tangent there. Don't forget to point your toes at the bottom, point your heel up at the top. Really squeeze it as high as you can. We want to feel that shake. That means the nerve is at its maximal range. A reminder for form: the first set I held the brick towards my bum on my hamstring. This meant that my knee was able to just sit kind of ever so slightly in front of my hips, so I was able to get my legs straight relatively easily, as in, you know, every time I hit straight there was never a question of hitting straight. This time, as you can see now, I'm not quite getting straight and I'm really pushing because I've got that knee now in front of the hip. So again, we were doing 2 sets on each side, which means about 40 reps in total, 20 on each leg. Get that brick nice and high. Now, doing these with the brick is a preference for me. I just find it easier to hold on to. Some people honestly prefer to kind of link their hands behind there, but I just get sweaty palms and they slip apart, so it gives me something else to think about. I find the brick more beneficial. Okay, remember as well that the resting leg, we want to keep your resting femur as close to the floor as possible. We've got that iliopsoas, which links between the bottom of the spine and the top of the femur. And when we sit, that is probably one of the key muscles that gets shortened quite drastically. Yours actually looked alright the other day when we were doing this, so just make sure you focus on keeping that leg straight and we'll maintain that. Okay, and now we're into our 10 leg raises. Toes pointed for this one. We're squeezing to the top, holding for 5 seconds. Squeeze. That's number 2. Number 3, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Number 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Number 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Number 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Number 7, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Number 8, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Number 9, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Number 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I can't stress enough with this one how quickly you will build up the strength, and you won't always necessarily notice how much higher your leg is because you don't have a good angle to really view it. But if I were to show you the video of me doing this from about 3 weeks ago, again, I used to do lots of passive stretching. It's the active stretching that I've begun recently which has made the real differences in my flexibility and my mobility, and that one is one that is a particularly good indicator of it. If I look back a couple of weeks, I really couldn't lift that leg, probably greater than 45 degrees, and you could see there I was relatively comfortable getting it almost vertical to 90. So I would hope we'll get some similar reactions from you. Alright, now we're coming through to the kind of tough bit here. We got the downward dogs. We're really putting ourselves to the test here. So it's a 20-second downward dog hold, a 10-second single leg downward dog hold, pushing forwards into the long lunge, and then stretching that rear hip flexor. Okay, so rearrange yourself nicely. My chest was a bit tight today. You can see I'm not quite in a straight line there. Remember to externally rotate your shoulders to give yourself the best chance of getting your shoulders as low as possible. Okay, there we go. 10. Oh, there's Vic. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Kingsley's coming in. 3, 2, 1. There's my long lunge. Okay, if it takes more than one move to get that foot where it needs to be, take more than one move to get that foot where it needs to be. Okay, what you could do here, for example, if your foot is only halfway, is use the hand I've just put on my knee and then just manually move that foot forwards. Just push it when you're in this position. No problem with that. Okay, you can see I'm rotating here. I'm trying to get a little bit of extra hamstrings. My hamstrings were tight today. For you, really, we're more concerned about the hip flexor at this stage of the routine. That's more a result of my other routines that I'm doing. Okay, hands down, raise the back leg, see if you can lift that foot back. If you can, that's really good. If not, it will come in a few weeks' time. There you go, one set of downward dogs and the AC had to come on because suddenly my heart rate's going. Okay, give the wrists a little bit of a wiggle. Coming into set 2. Now again, we're doing 4 of these, so 2 on the right, 2 on the left, but we're going to do them right, left, right, left. Okay, coming back, finding our downward dog position. Pushing hips up, trying to close that angle at the hip. Remember, what we want to focus on with you now is keeping the line straight between the hips, the shoulders, the elbows and the wrists. The straighter line in the upper body, the better. Okay, we know your lower body is good because you've got good ankle range. So really focusing on the top. What you could try, you see where my eyes are looking there in this position? I was looking towards my fingertips. That's something that will help you keep your form possibly slightly stricter when you're in this position. Remember, knee out to the sides, we're coming forward. If the foot doesn't quite make it there, I could use my right hand, just to give it a little shove forwards. Okay. Again, these are moves that need learning as much as anything else. So if it doesn't work smoothly to begin with, don't worry, give it a week or 2 and you will very quickly learn the patterns and your body will start doing what you want it to. It's interesting, I've just noticed that my second toe lifts when I do this one. I wonder why that is. That could be that short adductor, funnily enough, actually. You can see there how just a little bit of tension at the hips really does run the whole way down to your toes, and this is why we spend so long on the hips. Alright, this was good of me. I switched around to show you the other side. This means you get a better view of both my bum and my face. We did talk about doing this with bricks under your hands. Again, that's fine. Can't reiterate enough. Focus on upper body form. Okay, obviously we need to get the elbows straight eventually to hit this perfectly. But for you, even if you want to sort of almost stand on tiptoes, a bit like that sort of bent leg downward dog progression we do in the other routine, I would keep your knees locked out, but just raising your heels slightly might allow will allow your shoulders to sort of straighten out a little bit. Holding this for 10, remember if you can't keep it up there for the full 10, then just rest it on the back of the other ankle, although you did do well with this one when we did it the other day. Down we come, finding the long lunge, back knee to the floor, back foot flat. If you need to move that leg forwards, do, and pushing through that hip flexor. Once again, just holding for about 30 seconds. Okay, foot back up, knee raised, and see if you can get that foot back. Again, that's one of those things that looks fairly innocuous, but actually you'd be surprised how many people find that very difficult. Not least because when you take one of your feet off your hand, suddenly have to take twice the weight. This lovely t-shirt that you're looking at, by the way, in case you're wondering, is designed by one of my grade 11 students. Alright, about to hit the last one. Up into that nice downward dog, extending through the arms and the shoulders. Raise the heels to keep your shoulders straight. Okay, now the shoulders are starting to warm up there. I sort of put a few little pulses in. Particularly when you lift this opposite leg off, right, that's when you can start to try and push that opposite heel to the floor. And remember, the further down your chest goes here, the higher your other foot raises. It's very difficult to raise your back leg if your shoulders are not straight. If you're bent at the shoulders and taking weight through your front delts, the front of your shoulders, it's going to be very difficult to lift the leg. We want to almost imagine that the leg that is on the floor is kind of like the midpoint of a scale, and by putting extra weight, or like a seesaw I suppose is maybe a better analogy, we put that extra weight through the shoulders, the other side lifts. Okay, back, and that's our downward dog's done. Alright, so we're getting close to the end now. Our last one, again, we've got one of these slightly complex routines. We're going to do right leg, then left leg, coming into another nice lunge position, and we're raising the back leg. Again, form pointers, remember, it feels easier to have the bricks way in front of us here. You can see now as we get down into position, let's have the bricks further forwards. Once we're there, we can start to move them back, which is just going to keep our shoulders nice and strict. Once my back knee is touching the floor, I'm going to push my hips as far down as I can. Now for me, I'm alright with my foot in front of my knee here. We did say that you might prefer to do it with that foot a little bit tighter so that your knee is over your ankle rather than your ankle being just in front. Okay, I'm going to try and keep the blocks out of the way so you can see my back leg. There's a bit of raise in my hips here. I'm trying to eliminate the raise. That was a better rep. I'm trying to just push that back knee backwards. Okay, just holding each one for sort of 1 or 2 seconds. We're doing 5. Then we're coming into a rest, keeping the blocks high. Again, looks fairly innocuous actually. When I've not warmed up, I still find this quite tight, even though my hamstrings are fairly loose. Compared to an average person at least, not compared to Vic. Really couldn't find out how it was best to do it with these bricks, and as a result my chest is perhaps slightly further forward than I would like it to be. That's number 2. Number 3. What we're looking for here is the straightest possible line across the groin between the underside of your front hamstring and the top side of your back thigh or quad. Okay, we're coming for our second rest period on this leg. Again, I was just going to progress this by turning the blocks onto the side. That's entirely optional. Just help me remember where I am, because I can't concentrate on counting because counting is boring. Okay, we're holding these for about 30 seconds. I didn't feel like I needed a massive rest here, so I sort of wasn't counting the full 30. I think these, if you want to just sort of bash through these quite quickly at the end of the routine, you could probably get through twice as many. Here we go, last one this side. 1, 2, and down. 3, 4, and down. This is looking good now on this side. See that the hips are raising much less than they did on that first set. They're now stuck in that position. That back leg is doing all of the movement for me. Probably also helps that I did keep the bricks in the right place here. Now, there's where that foot comes across. See how far that is, right in the brick, and then sliding hips forward. Okay, again, don't expect to be able to do that overnight. It's going to take a while. Just get the foot nice and far over. It makes space for the knee. If you don't get the foot far enough over, it's going to end up underneath your bum when you slide yourself forwards. So we want it all the way out. Okay. Now what you could do also, there's no reason why you wouldn't have, I don't know, a pillow or something underneath your front leg the whole time when you're doing this. If you prefer landing your pigeon just onto that slight elevation like we talked about with the other routine. I think you'd be able to do that no problem in this. It's not going to get in the way when you're doing the long lunges. It's not going to get in the way when you're transitioning to the straight leg hamstring. So I think it would be fine to tuck that underneath your front leg. Okay, if you want to just sort of test your range, see if you're able to sit in that position, that's good. Again, I think the pigeon position, again, your aim is not to achieve the splits, but I think achieving a good pigeon is a reasonable aim for you for a few months' time. We're not going to train for it specifically, but just as a result of the general hamstring, hip flexor, glute training, we should be able to hit a nice pigeon. And again, it's a really good one for sitting in. It's probably actually better to sit in than a front splits, because you get that sideways glute activation from the front leg rather than the linear activation, which undoes slightly more of the negative effects of sitting. So pigeon's good, basically. We're going to nail it in the next couple of months. Okay, I think we're on about 4 here. Next one's number 5. First rest. Kingsley was starting to pour at the door there. That was who I was talking to. Alright, we're about to go into number 2. I think all of the techniques are pretty clear for this one now. Went through them all on the other leg. This routine is a bit harder than the other routines we've done so far. There's a bit more to think about. There's a few more moving pieces. It's one thing to stretch the muscles in a static position. It's a whole nother thing to start mobilizing the joints around it as well. So it might feel a little bit demoralizing at times when your foot doesn't go as far forward as you want, or your back doesn't straighten as much as you want, but it will get there in the not too distant future if we keep up at the pace that we are currently doing. And then when it does work, it will be incredibly satisfying. You will remember the first time you slide into a pigeon from this position, and I'm expecting a text and then video evidence, because it's 2021. If you didn't get it on camera, it didn't happen. Alright, just finishing off this other leg. Really struggling to find positions where I can keep my legs in view. Although I did quite like stretching in this room. Got a nice view of the city and quite nice light. I can actually see the difference between the black and the blue, which I wasn't expecting, so turned out slightly better. If you do like this angle, let me know, and I can do more from it. If you prefer the straight side on angle in the other room, also fine, but let me know what your preference is. Okay, really happy with how that pigeon's looking for me. Again, I was probably 20 centimeters off that before I started my active stretching. What was it, 5 or 6 weeks ago now? 5 weeks ago. You can see on this one I'm leaning a little bit further forward. It's a bit more difficult for me to hold the position. We'll get there though. Don't worry about how far those front bricks go. Again, like we said, you can use them to sort of, you push up on the bricks, and as a reaction you can push down through the hips. Wherever is comfortable is absolutely fine. Again, I also quite like doing it with the wall in front. If you've got a wall in front to push off of, give that a stab. This last bit is not really part of the routine because my hamstrings have been so tight all day. I mean, I can see here I could really not get my lower back down at all. So I just gave these a little stretch out. So you can watch these, you can do them if you want, and if not, we're going to call that the routine.